Hello and welcome to our series of complimentary webinar. You've gone through two webinars already, specifically related to negotiation, pricing and financing modules. We're now going to cover another competency which is required within procurement function, which is procurement leadership, governance and functional design. I'm Rupali Khurana, who's been working for Arc Blue Global Consultancy for about 4.5 years and have been working as a lead procurement consultant who've helped many large organizations to medium size, specifically related to enhance the procurement and supply management function. Well, one of the big things is that I've worked in 4 different countries, about 42 different nationalities, and have managed different efficiency and valuable services to corporates within the last 16 years. Currently, I'm based in MENA region and have helped industries such as oil and gas, retail, banking, aviation, IT, and hospitality. Well, before we even move forward, what we would really like you to focus on is to get all the distractions around you to be put away, such as your emails and your phones. Clear your desks so you can make notes. There should be some pen and paper for you so you can make some notes. Within your webinar, we'll be asking some exercises and dilemmas and questions to you. If you could have a pen and paper, then you can write down all the answers to those questions that we will ask. If you can use your headphones, that would be quite helpful, specifically if you are in the busy office. Obviously, you don't want everybody to hear you, right? And if you have any questions related to this specific seminar or any other webinars, please connect to us on seminar.administrator@arcblueglobal.com. We would also like to announce within this webinar that if you have any specific requirement within webinar and you would want to learn a specific topic, please send us an email on the address given above, and we are more than happy to tailor and customize the information for you. Well, of course, now you're thinking, which company are you dealing with? We are Arc Blue Global Organization, which was established in 1978. We have around 100 consultants and we earn revenue of 10 million euros. Our major objective is to run 100% focused, equipped knowledge, specifically related to procurement. We have run about 1,500 workshops for 10,000 professionals and assessed around 2,000 people annually. Our return on investment is 10:1, and our wide range of services and consultancy include transformation, benchmarking, process development, project support, skills development, accredited learning, and e-learning. Let's take an example of benchmarking. How can you benefit from a benchmarking? We will look at your procurement processes that you're currently following. We will benchmark it based upon the best practices available. We cover all the global best practices, not specific to any specific governing body. However, we cover all the specific required best practices and use best practices. We are established in Canada, in UK, in Africa, UAE, Singapore, Australia, Asia. We're also looking in the markets such as Turkey, Egypt. We are globally based, as I mentioned before, in Europe, Middle East, Asia Pacific, Southern Africa, North America. What are our products and services, and what do we deliver? We help companies and individuals to know their procurement capabilities through our assessment tool. Within this assessment tool, we are able to assess around, 12 competencies. Those 12 competencies has further subdivided questions which include around I think around 112 questions. These assessments help an individual to know their weaknesses and strengths. This helps the corporate people to know the strengths of their staff members within procurement function. Say, for instance, one of your individual staff member is very good in risks or in contracts. Then it's easier for a line manager to understand and put it the specific person's task around that work. Similar to that, we do trainings, e-learnings, procure to pay, full training cycle, and the setup of procure to pay process. We also help organizations to learn the recruitment for them. Further to that, we look at setting up the dashboards. These are very good tools for spend analysis and its management. It has helped many companies to save their unnecessary costs, and generate savings. Next is social procurement, transformation, and advisory. So what we need to know is what we're going to cover within this seminar for around 35 to 40 minutes. As you know, we can't really cover the whole topic because it's quite broad, but we're going to try to make sure that you guys get the glimpse of what is covered within the leadership, governance, and functional design of procurement function. The major objective of this webinar is highlight the main things that you will need to know if someone says to you, "Oh, by the way, what does procurement do? How can procurement add value to the organization? What's the role of procurement? You just buy, don't you?" That's when you should be able to answer a few questions which makes them stunned. No, procurement can do lots of things, and its leadership and power is huge, which can change lots of things and bring savings and efficiency within the organization. How can procurement function achieve all that is through setting up the good governance and functional design within the organization, where procurement is given enough empowerment so procurement people are able to take good actions, hence good results for the company. So as you can see that in the agenda, we're going to talk about procurement and purchasing definitions, purchasing contribution to profit, role of purchasing in procurement and supply chain management, its governance. Within governance, we're going to talk more on policies and procedures, its competency framework, and its mandate. Functional design, which is related to organizational design, people's development and learning pathways, tactical versus strategic procurement, its designing and managing the business needs. As I said, our objectives for subject is mainly for you guys to understand what is the main value of procurement. What are those policies and procedures that I need to set up in my organization so I'm able to get good value for my procurement department, give good results to my company? How do I deal better with my stakeholders so that my stakeholders are happy and I'm keeping all my stakeholders in connection with each other, give good relationship in the end? We will also talk about people development and how can we run the people development through the tools. So let's talk about the first topic, which is procurement power and its leadership. Before even I go scrolling talking about procurement and purchasing, let me give you 2 minutes to think about the difference between procurement and purchasing. Can you think about, as an example, how can you differentiate between purchasing and procurement? So surely you've gone through what is procurement and purchasing, and I'm fully sure you understood what that was. Let's go through it in a different manner now, where procurement is an end-to-end process within an organization where the organization contracts with external third parties to obtain the goods and services required to meet its objective now and in future without undue risk and in a timely and cost-effective manner. Some people also call it is the purchasing is concerned with acquisition of supplies or inputs to the organization activities and a strategic approach to planning for and acquiring the organization's current and future needs through effectively managing the supply base. Now you must have thought, okay, that's very much into procurement. What is purchasing? So if you look at the second paragraph, which is talking about purchasing, it's mainly talking, purchasing is buying goods or services to fill the demand or requirement of the organization. Procurement is end-to-end activities which are involved to buy the goods and services. So you need to think about what are those different types of goods and services. One of the things is the direct goods and services, and what are those indirect goods and services. We often buy different types of goods and services. One is direct goods and services. Now let's talk about procurement power and its leadership. In this specific section, we're going to talk about procurement and purchasing definition. Let me give you a couple of minutes to think about what is the difference between purchasing and procurement. Please use a pen and paper. You can either draw a shape, you can just draw a line and describe what you cover within purchasing and what you cover in procurement, or you can write your words. It's just a great reflection for you to do, so you understand the clear definitions of the two. So surely you've written now the difference between the two. If I think about procurement, I'm sure you've written the similar, which is it's an end-to-end strategic approach of buying goods and services to fulfill the need of the organization. As I said, this is the process by which an organization contracts with external third parties, which is supplier, to obtain the goods and services required to meet its business objectives now and in the future without undue risk and in a timely and cost-effective manner. Hence, it's an end-to-end process. However, purchasing is a part of procurement, which is where you specifically related to just acquire the supplies or inputs, which is raw materials, components, goods and services to the organization activities, which could be consumption or resale. It all depends. So I'm sure you've written the similar. When we are purchasing, we procure two different things, which is either goods or services. What are those? What is the direct goods and services which are required within the organization? And what are the indirect goods and services which are required in the organization? When you are asked to procure an item, you probably must have seen people asking, you'll be involved in indirect buyings, you'll be involved in direct buyings. What does that mean? What difference? How do you differentiate? So the direct goods and services are the items purchased which form part of your cost of sales, the goods and services used to make or provide the goods or service you sell to your customers. Any indirect goods and services are those which are purchased to support your business and form part of your general overhead costs, such as marketing, IT, any support services. So capital procurement, such as equipment building, is included in this, which is strange, but it is included in this because it's specifically related to our projects. So let's think of what are the goods and services that you buy in your organization. Let me give you a couple of minutes again for you to write down what are those goods and services that you buy for the organization. You can organize them into those that are purchased in order to manufacture the goods or services you sell or provide to customers direct, and those are purchased in order to help run and support the organization indirect. Let's move on to it and then think about the direct items in manufacturing industries are raw materials, semi-finished components, contract direct labor, packaging, logistics, and support. Sorry, I went too quick. Indirect items, it is IT, office supplies, facilities management, repair, HR services, travel, capital equipment, and marketing. You might ask the question, why would we put capital equipment there? It's because the capital equipment might be needed, but it's not directly involved to produce that item. Let's take an example of this. Gosh, when you're producing a Porsche Boxster, how many different items would you need to produce and buy? Well, I use the word produce because Porsche might also produce the things themselves. But you see, you need the cooling modules, you need seat structure, you need sound system, engine management, you need ignition coil. Gosh, that's a lot of items to buy. It's a lot of investments too. It means literally Porsche must be spending a lot of money with the outside suppliers. Hence, a lot of potential of reducing the costs and bringing savings to the company. Also, lots of responsibilities on the buyers when they are buying the commodity from the third party. How can we make it all efficient? We need to decide that. Now you can imagine how Porsche must be coping with it sustaining its profit. So many items to buy. Obviously, the price of the Porsche will go up, won't it? Now, with the competitive market that we live in, if Porsche becomes very pricey, its customers can lower down. If that's what their model is, which is fair enough, because that they're only going to sell to few customers and they follow only A category suppliers, those who give quick earning, that's fine. But if they want to bring out less costs for the company and earn more revenue, how can companies sustain its business with so much spending? Have you thought about that? What will they do? They will definitely increase the price of the car, right? Or they might also think of, let's go and do more sales in different countries, be more global, and then all the sales and marketing people will be quite busy selling. Or they could also say, let's start doing better and wise buying, hence reduce their internal costs. Oh, come on, all the bosses will say, how can we do that? We don't want to lose the quality of the company. The Porsche is known for its brand and the quality, I can't compromise. Well, just to give you a little bit of information, don't know whether you've heard of DuPont analysis, which was developed in 1920s accounting model, where we say, Mr. Porsche, you don't really need to reduce your quality. All you need to do is to run wise spending through our special model, if you see this, to get to the return on net asset, which is here, where currently you're earning 9.9% with a spending of 60 million euros. How can I get this better? We can sort that out for you. Let's have a look how we can do that. If you think about sorry for the noise. If you see, if we reduce the purchasing material and services, which is 60 million, by 2%, just the 2%, which is 58.8 millions, which goes down the total cost to 98.8 million. Your income before tax goes to 6.2 from there. The margin goes to 5.9, which is already higher. And the return on net asset is 12.4, which is 25% increase in your total revenue. Well, return on net assets, huh? Now, how did that all happen? With just a 2% reduction in your material and services. Can you see how much we can add value as procurement people? How can I achieve that 2% reduction? What do I need to do so I can bring more return on net asset for my company? By providing good market information for the company, creating sourcing and contracting approaches, providing expertise to non-specialist staff so that when they are going and talking to different stakeholders, they know what they're talking about, hence there is no increased cost. Identifying and reducing risks, so unnecessary costs don't come along. Let's take an example of claims variation. How many times when we have run a contract, we have to pay extra costs to the supplier over the budget simply because we didn't write a proper budget before? Reducing costs. What are those ways that I can reduce the costs? Engineering the product, outsourcing some of the products which are not the core activity of the company, consolidating all the supply items which are bought in different regions by different supplier. Perhaps one supplier can deliver a better efficient supply to you. Secure contract drafting, hence it shouldn't be variation as I said before. Building cost models and assessing prices. How can I make sure that my budget is exactly the same when the total costs are made for the specific contract? How can I assure that? By making sure that I prepare the cost modeling before I even go out to the supplier. Prioritizing, identifying supplier improvement opportunities. Have you ever thought, hey, this supplier is doing a great job in the logistics for me, one way of bringing the truck full loads of bags, cement bags. Can I make a use of him? I know he's going empty when he goes back to his company. Can I use him in a way that when he goes back, he doesn't go back empty truck? Can I load scrap stuff which can be thrown in the scrap yard? Then it's a saving of money for me, right? So I'm talking to the supplier, trying to find out, can we do something differently where both of us save money? What are those negotiation skills that we need to do and use? Reducing time, Along with that, you can see that there are quite a few, see how many other activities we can run to add value within organization. Let's take a simple example of innovation, which is really needed in this part of the world now. Collaborative development, value analysis and value engineering. Let me give you an example of one of the electronic bike that I was working with. They were producing the bicycle, and they had a battery at the back of the bicycle. Based upon what? That battery gave a signal to the computer, who said, okay, now it's above the 200, the chip would stop the speeding of the cycle. So after the 200 speed, the cycle cannot go further than that, faster than that. It's a great formula to stop the electronic bike. Even when you're pedaling very fast at the speed of 200, it wouldn't go any forward. So there was a small little white loop which was being produced, which was catching the connection between stopping the cycle pedaling very fast. That was very good and very important part of the battery of the cycle. That specific battery, that little loop that I'm talking about, we outsourced it. We outsourced it rather than producing it inside. It saved us 35%. But for that, we really had to engineer the product, which means we had to make sure that we talk to the software engineers, we need to talk to the people who are producing the battery. We literally had to change the shape of the battery. So you change the battery, you design the battery to able to get a better cost efficient product. Hence a less cost to the customer. Similarly, you can see about price and cost. How can we bring better prices? We really do analysis and cost drivers. What are those cost drivers of a suppliers that I can make sure that suppliers doesn't get pinched and I reduce his cost and I make better pricing from him? Talking about, I can provide as a purchasing organization a knowledge on how to write the scope. What is actually required in the market? What is available? Match the two. We can also run a risk analysis. We can create a strategic risk factor. We can talk about Incoterms. Can you imagine how much we can add value to the organization as a procurement function? Now, how do you think procurement team generated profit when buying the following? Another example where you can say, oh, I can really add value. Well, I'm not sure if you have seen the watermelon. This watermelon is a square shape. It could be a different reason, but I picked up this picture where I said, wow, this must be a cost-efficient product. If you think about the logistics aspect of it, earlier it used to be a circle watermelon. Now it's a square watermelon. If you think in the truck, if you put a circle watermelon, it must be quite difficult to really put lots of watermelons. But if you square them up, then you can put more in a container. Hence you save the cost. Similar to this. Not sure if you remember earlier on, the glasses had not a diagonal shade and a smaller surface, but straight line glasses, and which made the surface bigger. Hence it's covering more space, and we couldn't really stack them the way it's been stacked now. So if you can again engineer the product, which is to make a smaller surface and stacking the glass on top of each other, you can pack it better. Again, you're saving it more money. So value engineering the item can reduce transportation costs to 25%. Indeed, it requires lots of cross-functional management. So you can see there are lots and lots of things that procurement can add value to the organization. Another example. So the cost reduction can be also done through the supply chain analysis. You need to think, if I need to buy a folding cartons, I need to understand the full supply chain and need to see harvesting of trees, shipment of trees, manufacture of pulp, manufacture of sheet and conversion of sheets. Where do I enter in that then I can reduce my cost? Hence a better pricing to the end customer and more customer, hence a better revenue. That's all. We can do a lot of things as a procurement people. We can really add value by many different ways. So I've given you 2 examples or 3 examples. I'm sure if you think aloud, you can think of many different ways on how you can reduce cost. I know what you're thinking now. Who's got time? Who's got time in writing RFPs? We are always busy writing RFPs, and who's got time doing all this? But listen, if we think properly and we create better projects, like I done many project direction for many different companies, specifically related to how to generate efficiency and savings for the company. The objective is that we follow project while we are working. We don't want you to go out of the way to do the work. Hence, how can I do that? Out of the way? What do you mean? How can I do that? Which means we need to have a good policies and procedures in the organization. Our governance should be clear in a way that then we are able to bring good integration or integrity within the organization, which helps you not to spend unnecessary time. Why are the procurement policies required? The most commonly purchasing policies are used to identify the conduct of purchasing staff. What will be purchasing staff be doing? Why do I need him? That will be given in the policy. The seller and buyer relationship, to what extent I can have a relationship with the supplier. I'll talk about this in future when we are talking about different types of policies. Again, what is the role of a purchasing function in my organization? What's the policy of it? Identify the operational issues and identify the social business objectives. Let me do a little health check for you from you. Give you a few minutes to think. Do you have a set procurement policies within your organization? Please write yes or no on the paper while I'm asking you the questions. I'm sure you do. If you do, how are these policies integrated to the organization policies? Are they fully integrated? Or is it just a policy which is sitting on the desk or on the computer slide or on one of the folders which nobody knows? And how are those policies understood by each department of the organization? And who is the procurement head? Is he going and telling you are not allowed to sort out what you're doing? You're not allowed to go out and buy on behalf of us. You have to follow the policy. Who is following those policies? Please answer that for me. Can you also write at least 3 different policies that you are aware of? Let me check your knowledge. That you know that you have it in your organization and are used within your company. Do you make all the stakeholders follow these policies regimentally, or is it just, as I said before, is it sitting in one of the folders of your computer directory? I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. I'm sure you've not written by now. The first thing is, before I move out to the policies, let me ask you a question: that how integrated are your purchasing policy into company policies? In designing procurement strategy, top management will have to make decisions by keeping in mind the company's business policies and do the positioning based upon three major stakeholders, which is primary customer group or targets groups. They are majorly involved in the issues of market positioning and segmentation. I won't go into detail in this specific topic, but we can run the seminars based upon that, which is how do we market position and how do we segment? How do we segment our supply? What is the difference between the low risk and high risk value items? The major competitors, who are our major competitors in the market, companies must not only be able to respond to customer needs, but also respond in such a way that they achieve distinctive, sustainable competitive advantage. What are those major suppliers who are available in the market? Developments in the supplier markets necessitate continuous review of the company's core activities. What are the key elements of procurement policy? What are those specific policies? Let's start from governance policy. There's scope of purchasing authority, objectives of function, delegation of authority, segregation of duties. It will be defined in this policy. But the procurement function should be fully aware that who are those people who are allowed to go and do specific tasks within your department. For example, tender committee. Who can be giving you the responses on the RFP that you've received back? The tender that someone has bid in and you are evaluating. Who are those people who are going to evaluate the tender results? Will be given in there. Duties and responsibilities of each purchasing staff will be defined in there too. Health and safety policies. What is your specific health and safety policies? Let's take an example on if you are building a construction of a certain petrol station. Those laborers who are working on that construction site, what specific health and safety measures are you taking? Are you visiting that site? Are you making sure that the laborers who are working in there are given enough requirement of theirs? Or are you making sure that there are no usage of under 14, which is children, working in that construction site? In a simple manner, another one, if there is a ergonomic problem for a person and he's been sitting for 8 hours every day and out for a week and he's got a pain in the back, well, that's not really a good health and safety measure for the company, is it? Are you taking care of that? Are you also taking care of companies such as those specific requirements such as pregnant women? They have swellings in their feet. Are they taking care of that? Some specific health and safety for oil and gas industries. Are you making sure that the gas protectors are already there? So each industry has a different health and safety policy. And that goes for an ethics policy. What is your policy for entertainment and gift? Someone asked me a question. So what happens if someone gives us the gifts? Well, all suppliers bring us gifts of saying thank you for giving us the work. What do you do with that? I remember when I was working in Netherlands, in our company, we were only allowed to accept 25 euros worth of a gift. Anything which comes up, we had a policy. Our objective was that we can't really say no to the supplier in a very negative way because we don't want to really make them feel bad. So what we used to do, if it was a very expensive item, we would keep it in the office, or we will send an email out to the supplier saying we cannot accept anything higher than 25 euros so the supplier don't feel bad. But if it comes before we even send the email out, then we would just simply make sure that the supplier doesn't feel bad and we leave it in the company itself. And what are your policies in relation to supplier relationship management? How are you evaluating? What steps do you take in the tendering system, selection of supplier? How transparent are you when selecting the supplier? What transparency system have you got? How can you make sure that not there is no cartel going out in the market who's supplying your items and they are bidding together? How do I make sure that all suppliers get the similar information, which is the supply communication, which is that you don't give a separate information and the confidential information to the supplier? That I think I've given you the answers in there, which is what would you do if a Japanese supplier brings you a gift? Do you have a defined policy for that? What's your organization policy for the construction laborers' health and safety while your contractor is developing a building for your organization? I'm sure you have it, but are you aware of that? And what actions are you taking? There are other few, which is procurement policy, which is sourcing policy, auditing policy, confidentiality policy, environment policies, and trading with blacklisted countries. Let's talk about the data protection and electronic trading. What policies do you have? What if someone comes to you and say, we don't allow you to use our data to any other public environment, and you know that your company has to put the content of any document that has been prepared, which is not confidential, but it's a marketing material, it has to be put on the public. So there's a difference between their data protection policy and your data protection policy. Where do you stand in those cases? Would you then not contract with such a supplier who's a great supplier providing great information, but they are hooked on to some specific content which they have developed specifically and have a copyright, and they don't want it to be publicized in the public matter? I'm just going into now the negative sides of policies. So when you are producing the policies, what you need to make sure that it doesn't really becomes a regiment in a certain way, that it blocks you to do good things. At this moment, I can't go into too much detail on this specific policy because obviously we only got a certain amount of time. But what I can say that when we are drafting these policies in ArcFlow, we are helping our clients, we make sure that we cover good, the information, which also helps those types of difficult suppliers, but great and knowledgeable suppliers. Now we've done the policies and governance, we're going to talk about the procedures in procurement. What should you be following in the procurement procedures? We must have a full procurement cycle. I'm going to talk about that in a minute with you, which is procurement cycle. Use of purchasing forms, legal contract development, which involves basic contract principles, steps for contract development, essential elements of contract, competitive contractual procedures, compliance with the contract terms, execution of an agreement, and legal compliance. And there are quite a lot of jargons in there, and I can imagine that could be quite difficult for you to understand a few terms, which I'm again more than happy to customize for you if you really would want to get more details within it. All that is great, as I said, the policies and procedures are amazing, but how does it impact on a procurement? So impact on decision making depends on the nature of decision. So as I said, your example of data protection policy, some suppliers don't want their things to go out publicly, however, the company doesn't mind. So how do we handle that? So we need to come up with the specific decisions accordingly, which is the routine decisions, which depends heavily on established rules or procedures. For example, call-off orders, management of tender processes. Adaptive decisions, which require human judgment, For example, capital purchasing, non-standard item purchasing, which is we have to adapt if something has come along and it is capital. We can't really follow exactly same policy in that case. Innovative decision, which is first time, we haven't had any procedure before, we need to develop a procedure, which is the development of a global sourcing. So if some company, for example, I was working with a company who produces a specific type of chemical which goes in the paper bag that helps you to the water not to flow away when there are floods and very drastic tsunamis conditions. In those specific chemical was only produced in one country where they were buying it from. However, they knew they could go to other different countries, but they were quite politically difficult countries where they were working in, and it was hard for them to go out and buy from any other different country because nobody was willing to supply the items to them. In those scenarios, what sort of policies should we be doing? We need to think of the innovative decisions in those cases, which is then the company decided to develop a supplier within the country and ask them the way they can produce it, the raw material required, because raw material import was not as hard as a complete buying of material within that country. So we need to be aware of what type of decisions we need to take as and when required. So the policies and procedures must be written, but they have to have adaptability based upon three different scenarios as mentioned here. Now let's move on to functional design. As I said, based upon the purchasing cycle. Whoa, we can see how many steps are involved in there. Well, it's still loading up to 27 steps. Not sure if you could have thought of all those steps. I'm sure you could have, but I run this exercise in my trainings, face-to-face trainings. It's amazing, where I simply put the cards out and ask them to, as they're shuffled cards, which has got all these 27 items on each of them, and we're asking them to sequence it as per what is given on this slide pack. And you got it now on the free webinar. It's a great exercise to really make you understand what is the function design, what is the procurement cycle, what are the various steps which are involved within the designing of the procurement function. As you can see, the major ones are, I would shorten it, it's much easier, which is identify, plan and investigate sources. What do we fill in the first one? As you can see, determine need. I will talk about it, what you mean by determine need. Plan our purchases, specify requirement. Now you think about this investigating sources, you go back and you say, the source, the market, understand what is available in the market for this requirement of my company. Assess the capability. Then you talk about which supplier do I want to go once I've sourced the market, which supplier do I need to work with, and you run your tender system. You go back again and you say, you send your issue inquiry, you between your quotes, receive quotes, evaluation. So you've done the evaluation and quotation, a clarification. Sorry about that. We'll just put this away. Award of contracts, internal communication, activate call-offs, acknowledgement, expeditions, quality control. So you can see, I can go back to it to show you again, obtain delivery and our performances, and you can see this last step, which is receive, use, pay, review and disposal. Right, now when we know the purchasing cycle, and we need to know, the first step is identify the business needs. Now you will notice that I wouldn't be able to do all the steps, the detailed explanation of what is required within the purchasing cycle and the meaning behind each of the step, the 27 steps that we mentioned in purchasing cycle. However, I will go and run through few just snippets of each of the step within the purchasing cycle, and then we will talk about the organization structures, different types of organization structures that are specifically followed for procurement function. Let's talk about the identifying business needs. The first one is to understand the real business needs of the key stakeholders, which is the expression of purpose for the item, identification of the problem they are seeking to solve. What is it that we really need the stuff for? They're asking from me the item. What is the item real going to solve the problem for the organization? Clarity around why we want it and what it's really for. What do stakeholders need the supply, market, and procurement strategy to deliver for them? Which drive the development and selection of the preferred strategy. So if I really know that I need a defined type of an item, I'll give you an example in a minute, then I don't really need to prepare a special strategy for that. All I need to do is to go and find out who are the suppliers for the specific defined item, which has got all its scopes already written. I don't need to do any designing, any scope definition or anything. It's a very simple, straightforward answer, which is to go out and find out who can supply the items. However, if someone tells me that I need something for this function requirement which will resolve the problem for me in future, then I need to start thinking of a strategy that I need to follow. And the evaluation and selection of supplier, what type of a supplier I need to select based upon the requirement, the developments of a KPIs and performances. And recognize that there are both tasks and human needs. Often the collective responsibility of several functions and the cross-functional teams working is therefore imperative. Sorry, I just want to move forward, but I'll leave this slide there for you guys to see when you will get the slide pack through the webinar, because I just feel this is information that you can gain anyway. What are those hierarchy of needs? What's the first step that you need to understand within the purchasing cycle? First one is what is the business need? Business imperatives, the solution which must satisfy the organization, the end user, the client. What is the intended purpose of the hierarchy? Its requirements, broad outline of the functionality required to meet the business needs. Why is it required? Specification, which is a list of requirements, which is functional, performance, or conformance. Maybe blueprint, drawing, standards, etc. So let's take an example of how do we identify business needs. Let's take a very simple example of water bottles. What's the real need of buying this? To quench the thirst? Or is it positive image in a brand water? The requirements is it should be portable, it should be single use, can be resealed, containerized, sealed unit, robust, reasonably hard to rupture, crushable, and mineral water. If you want to go even further details, it'll talk about 500 milliliter clear PET bottle, defined water source, blue screw cap, and plastic labels. Now let's talk about the laptop requirement. Again, in the similar example, there's the input, process, store, and output data. Requirements, as you know, I'm sure lots of you have bought the laptops. What are those requirements? Which is store data, run programs, audio, visual display, operating system, battery, external power source. Oh, detailed specification in quite detail. Now, if we are going into all these detailed specification, what's the difference between the detailed specification to the conformance specification and to functional specification? I won't go into detail, but there's a huge difference in there. If you would want to know more, I can cover that in our next seminar. I've identified business need, but I need to define the business needs as well, which is capture all the business needs. What are the needs of the stakeholder? Now, I've given you a glimpse of only one step within our purchasing cycle out of 27 steps. Just a little bit of information of how detailed we explain in our trainings regarding the full purchasing cycle steps, and in within each step, how do we define each action and what does that mean. Again, if you would need a detailed information, please connect to our seminar coordinator, and he can connect to us to get you a customized training in there. Now let's talk about what should we be covering in the organization structure. Well, as you know, this should consist of the definition and allocation of tasks, the grouping of similar tasks into functional department. I should have turned the Skype on, sorry. Also the creation of systems, the allocation of responsibilities, the distribution of formal authority or decision making throughout the organization. And it is, you know, that the functional departments are there, and there's an executive, there's a middle management, and there's a lower management. And how do we control? It's got organizations' activities which need coordinating. This is usually left to its middle and some senior managers. The number of people they have directly reporting to them is called their span of control. What would you regard as a tight and wide span of control? Let me think about it, and let me make you think about it as well. What are the benefits of a tight span of control, a wide span of control? What are the likely disadvantages of each? As you know, if we put lots of controls in every step, then it's very hard to move up. So now let's think about, when I talk about the span of control, now let me say, if it's a functional structured organization, then how many controls can be added and how many controls can be managed by different people. So within operations, if you say the procurement might sit in here, procurement might be sitting in here. Now, it's not really beneficial. Now let's talk about how do we develop in the governance. When you're thinking about functional designing, you're talking about the organization structure, you're thinking about your control, you're thinking about people development pathways, which is how do I develop my people in the organization? What steps do I need to take? Now I'm going to talk about related to our competency framework and how it looks. If you see that our company has developed a 12 competencies, as I said in the starting of this webinar. Within this, what we do, that we have 12 competencies, and if I'm going to just zoom out, if you see that these are procurement leadership, governance, and financial design, that's something that I'm working with here now. Supply base and category analysis, risk management, category strategy, supplier appraisal. So there are 12 competencies, as you can see, based upon what we will assess and analyze each individual. Now that individual should, when I'm saying development pathways, that individual should lie in around 3 to be able to say, okay, this person is competent in certain things, and we are able to train that person in an efficient manner. But that doesn't mean that the person who's got below 3 in the points would not be suitable to go above the ladder. It just means that he needs more training, and he needs more help and support in development. And also what we focus on is that could also be that one person who's not good in a certain thing has got 2.5 or 2, but I'm sure that one person is developing or running through the assessment gets 4 in another, such as in this person has got supply base and category analysis as the highest point. So that's a great tool for companies to understand that they can use to develop their people. This tool also helps the line managers to know how far are their department to the excellence, hence achieve excellent results for the company. Similarly, when I said about the structure to be transparent, we again use the tool which is dashboard, and that dashboard helps you to understand where each supplier is. It's an easy, flexible and low cost solution. Again, you don't need to have it use the dashboard, but you need to create within the organization so that we have a transparent information for everybody involved, specifically for large organizations where the production distribution is very far, and then a supplier, for example, let's take example of Shell, has a lots of joint ventures, and if the supplier which is supplying the items to Shell is giving a good deal, and if you have a great dashboard set up, that information can be put in the dashboard, and through that information, if another supplier, their joint venture partner or joint venture company wants to buy, such as in Oman, wants to buy the similar item for their requirement, if they use a similar supplier, they can save the money. Other than that, they might have to use their own found supplier that might cost company more eventually. So having a dashboard really helps you to have a holistic view of different types of suppliers available, gives you great visibility of procurement activities going on in the organization, and also helps you to clean and categorize the data as far as the criticality and the spend is concerned. So you can see that in here again, I will go slightly up, that it can talk about the transactions, it can talk about the different suppliers, and it can talk about the categories as well. So this tool really again helps in the transparency in the organization. So now you could imagine that I didn't go into too detail on each of the technical side of the organization design or functional design, and the policies and procedures and the leadership, simply because I feel that within an hour, or within less than an hour, what you can really understand, I really didn't want to cover those informations which is far too technical and is harder to explain within such a short time. But however, what I have done is that I've given you a glimpse of a lot of information where if someone asks you a question and says, what can procurement do? What is its leadership? What is the power? And you can say these are the powers, and how can you make it happen is another question. If someone asks you, then you can say through the policies and procedures, and then when they say talk about um, how do I design that, then you can talk about some of the functional designing that I have mentioned it out here. Thank you for listening to me and understanding this procurement function specific related competency, which is leadership, governance, and function design. I'm quite happy to assist those who are really keen to enhance their procurement knowledge and provide you some quick tips, books, or articles that will enlighten you further. Here's my email address, or you can use our seminar coordinator email that I provided you before. Thank you for listening to me.